Welcome to another episode of the Understanding Ultra podcast, the podcast that likes to ask the question, why? We aim to give you the insights from the top ultra runners and trail runners from around the world, the people that work in the trail industry, and everybody else. We dive into training, nutrition, mindset, and racing strategies to help you to become the best ultra runner that you can be. So without further ado, let's speak to our next guest. Okay, so Martin Cox, welcome to Understanding Ultra.
Hi. Hi, Sam.
So we've had a bit of a preamble and we've discussed a few issues already and things that we're going to talk about, things that we're not going to talk about. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll get into the interview. So for people that aren't fully aware of who you are, so Martin Cox, you're a running coach, a proper coach, based in France. You're in France, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm currently in the south, down by Monaco. Yeah.
Right, south of France, and you have a very successful coaching business called VO2max Coaching. Is that right?
That's right. I don't know. As a business, I wouldn't say it's successful, but as a, I have produced, helped establish some really good runners. But as a business, it's a terrible business. I make hardly any money. Oh, it's true. My tax bill was like £200. I just filled it in the other week. £200 tax bill. I mean, no, but it's as a model, I think, for producing good athletes, successful athletes, it's good. I don't think being a successful coach and making lots of money are actually compatible, really.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to make lots of money as a coach, you've got to coach lots and lots of people. And if you coach lots and lots of people, you can't really do the job properly. So it's kind of, that's a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah, you got to sort of balance it out, and you one against the other. So you're providing a top level service to small amount of people, and they're getting the benefit of your knowledge and expertise, but you're not raking it in, so to speak.
No, well, not at all. I mean, I can coach maybe 15 or 16 people properly at the same time. And given what I charge, that's not really making a hell of a lot of money. I could probably coach 50 people because I get a lot of inquiries, but then I won't be able to give them the kind of attention to detail, that they need, and I'd make a lot of mistakes. But I know there's other coaches who coach in excess of 100 people. I don't know how they can actually do that. But sure, if I coached 100 people, I'd be loaded, and I'd be probably living in Monaco rather than outside Monaco.
You'd be living on a yacht just outside of Monaco.
Yeah, yacht. I definitely have a yacht. Yeah.
Brilliant. So just tell us a bit about you then. So growing up then, how did you get into running full stop? What made you pursue running?
I'm not really sure because I can't remember when I wasn't running. I guess I was a kid in the 1970s, 1980s, and kids just ran around all the time then. So I was running, and we did running at school, and like cross country and athletics. And I was better at running than I was at soccer or cricket or swimming because I was kind of weedy and small. And that's when it started, really. But I think it's different today. You don't really see kids running around a lot, do you? When they're little kids, 5, 6, 7. But I started at school, I guess. But before that, I was riding a bike when I was like 3, apparently. I used to ride bikes and run around a lot as a kid. I guess I had a lot of energy, but also I wasn't allowed in the house. The parents didn't want me in the house all the time. Now, especially this time of year. So we just get kicked out and just run around. I think, yeah, certainly my generation, that's how most people started running. Yeah, just when they were kids. And then later, a little bit later, I joined a running club because, the running clubs in the UK are pretty big. Because that was another way my dad to keep me out of the house. So yeah, just 3 times a week, I'd be down the track in Leicester, running around with all the other kids, doing sessions, track sessions and hill sessions in the winter. But yeah, I don't remember never not running or being really active, to be honest. No.
I think I'm younger than you, so I'm from the next generation. So I was born 79, and I grew up in the 80s. But I think we were the same in respects that this time of year, summer holidays, we were just out on our BMXs riding around the council estate, causing mayhem and trying to keep ourselves busy, going over the fields, just keeping out of. You talk about it now. I mean, I've got 2 daughters, 2 like pre-teen daughters, and they talk about, and that like I shudder to think of what we used to do. We used to just get up in the morning, I'll have breakfast, and then leave the house, and then we won't come home until probably tea time if we were hungry, and if we weren't hungry, we'd come back when the sun was going down, and nothing was ever said about it. So I think there's a couple of generations that were like that, but now kids, they're not active, are they? They're stuck behind TVs and phones and consoles and stuff like that. So it's not quite the same, is it?
No, I mean, I don't want to sound like a grumpy old man, but that's, kids are kind of a bit like that now, aren't they? They are kind of, just their community is not a real community anymore. They don't hang out in the park and play games. So everything's online. What they do, and that's not a very sort of physical thing. It's kind of the opposite, isn't it?
I've kind of kick my girls out, the same sort of thing. I'm like, right, the sun's shining outside, we're going outside, we're doing something outside, just turn the TV off, we're going outside. So I think maybe we're the last of the dying generation of active kids, I think.
I mean, I'm sure that if my parents had given me half a chance, I'd have stayed in all day on a Saturday watching TV, because there were some great programs, but I wasn't allowed in on a Saturday to watch. They wouldn't allow me, like my dad. There's just no way, There's no way. It's down to the parents, isn't it? How you grow up, really.
100%.
I'm sure if I had a mobile phone, I'd be on it all the time. It's
I think I would.
So much easier, isn't it? Just to absorb yourself in this sort of this perfect little world that's on your phone than it is to actually go out into the real world and face problems and get hurt and all that. I mean, I was breaking bones when I was a kid and getting arrested for various things that I didn't consider that bad, just like stealing golf balls. That was my favorite. That was my favorite pastime, because there was a golf course near the house, and we just when they were teeing off, we'd run out in the fairway and steal the balls, and we'd just collect them, and then we'd sell them back to the golfers at their clubhouse, and we had about 20 or 30.
That's the way to do it.
And there's a lot of running involved in that particular pastime.
So you've always been a runner, but I saw it on your website. You put that your first race was when you were 14, was it?
I mean, discounting school cross countries, the first kind of competitive road race. I was about that age, I think. But my memory is a bit hazy. But I did a lot of little races at school. But first time I put a number on, in anger was probably 14. I think it was a half marathon. My mum worked for this garage and they sponsored this half marathon, so that was my first race. I think that wouldn't be allowed anymore.
No.
14-year-olds in halves. But it took me I remember because I kept all the old training diaries. I ran about an hour 50. It's all right. But, I hadn't trained more than, I wasn't running more than 3 miles in one go at that point. But that kind of kick-started it because I realised that was a bit pathetic, an hour 50. So that's when I started doing sort of man's training rather than kids training.
Mm. So how did your career progress from there then?
Yeah, that's kind of a long story. I kind of got really good really quickly because we started training with the seniors. So yeah, I think by the time I was 17, I was in the top 10 or so in the UK on cross country. Cross country was kind of my thing. I didn't really like track, and my coach nicknamed me the cart horse when he saw me running around the track. That's the nickname he gave me. I think it was motivated me being called that. I certainly didn't take offence. But yeah, cross country, because I was really skinny and light, I could just sort of glide over all the mud. So I got really good at cross country. Then I got a scholarship to the University of Nevada in the US, because these universities they sort of headhunt all over Europe for the best runners, and Nevada had a very good cross country team, so they sort of got in touch with me. But unfortunately, I ended up with I had to do extra exams to get there, and I was training really hard. I was doing like 70, 80 miles a week, which is kind of quite a lot at 17, and had problems at home as well. So there's a lot of stress, and ended up getting a virus, which was sort of later they found it was something called ME, which is it's a virus that affects the brainstem. But that meant I couldn't go to the US because as soon as they found out I had a bad virus, and it's kind of a chronic, I just couldn't train at all, couldn't train. When I tried to train, I was just knackered all the time.
I was just going to say, is that a result of overtraining at a young age, do you think?
It wasn't just the training, really. I mean, the training was part of it, but your brain doesn't really distinguish between different types of stress. So there's training stress, and there's the the emotional stress I had at home because I didn't get on with my dad very well at that point. And then there's all this sort of stress from doing lots of exams because I was doing 4 A levels and also doing exams that I had to do to get into the university in the US. And that was affecting sleep. And so everything just piled on top of each other, and then eventually I broke down. So it wasn't really the training. If I'd been doing nothing else, I would have been okay. But it was just the accumulation of all these factors where it ended up in getting this virus. I mean, some people end up with bad injuries, whatever. Like stress fractures, or I got sick. I mean, not uncommon. It's really common, like athletes sort of struggling, burning out for that kind of reason, just from too much stress in life in general. But looking back, I certainly was taking on too much at that age, But I think it's maybe a good thing. With hindsight, I didn't go to the States because they have this tendency just to push all the college team really hard, and then some rise to the top and some just disappear without a trace because they're basically just disposable, these athletes. So I think I'd have been in that system. I'd have been burnt out. I wasn't actually strong enough to do that level of training at that age, I think. Because I was also sort of 16, 17, I suddenly started growing a bit because I was always small and weedy. I think that was quite stressful as well. I was kind of a late developer. Some people would say I'm still haven't quite developed, actually. I'm still learning, still growing. But, Yeah, but that was the way back then. You know, back then, the coaches, they really, the kids were given a free rein, and coaches pushed kids as much as the kids wanted to be pushed. They were never holding kids back. You know, it's quite normal back then to be doing 70 or 80 miles a week when you were a kid. That's why we turned out so many great runners in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, because there were lots of kids going into the sport and they were training really hard. And it's kind of different today. There's less kids going into athletics, and we're just really overprotective of them now. So I think you need to get the balance right. You can't just wrap a talented young guy up in cotton wool and stick him on 20, 30 miles a week till he's 17. You know, you've got to let them train hard, but not too hard, you know. Yeah, we've sort of overcompensated, really, I feel. But I don't coach young people for that very reason. That's the reason I don't do it, because
own personal experience.
And also I think my attitude towards training youngsters would differ vastly from what the parents wanted, and I don't want to be negotiating with parents. Coaching, I want to coach adults who make their own decisions. They haven't got parents making decisions for them and hassling me. Because I had a lot of that, because I started coaching at sort of club level, and there was a lot of that going on there, you know, parents getting involved, you know, and telling you what to do and all that. And that's not something I'm prepared to do, you know, I'm kind of the expert in that, and I don't like being told what to do. So I wouldn't coach kids for that reason. You know, and there's people better than me, I think, for coaching youngsters. You know, we've got the club setup's really good in the UK. We've got like hundreds of clubs, and they've all got these great volunteer coaches and with a lot of knowledge, and they've got big groups, you know, big groups of kids, and they have a bit of fun. Like I'm more like a coach for sort of adults who got nobody to train with, or very few people to train with, and I can, you know, I think if you're not in a group and you haven't got there's not a leader or something, you don't quite know what to do with yourself in terms of training, so you end up just guessing. And you know, I'm better for people, who are in that situation. You know, if somebody comes to me, a 20-year-old guy who wants to do a 5K, say, who's never really done much running, I say join a club. The best thing to do is join your local club, and I'll say, you're in Leeds, join Leeds. They've got an amazing club. Yeah, get training with those guys. I'm not the right sort of coach for that person. You know, you'll benefit more from being involved with the group and training with other people and getting pushed. Because that's the reason I got really good, is I trained with big groups and I was getting pushed every day. You know, every day I ran with people. Told you it was a long story.
It's good. So sort of after that period of illness then, and that chance that you missed out but then felt okay about, what happened then in your career progression in running?
Well, I didn't really run for 3 years. I went to university. I sort of passed my A-levels the second time, went to Manchester. I just kind of forgot about it and did a bit of cycling and did a lot of climbing, actually. And just gradually, I started sort of feeling more sort of human doing that. You know, the first year was pretty bad at uni, but then it gradually got better. I'd also changed my diet quite radically during that period as well. I started eating what you call a plant-based diet now. And I think changing the diet really helped me get strong again. I was eating a lot better than what I'd been doing when I was a kid. I just gradually got back into it. I think it took me sort of 5 years. I think it wasn't until I was like 24, 25 before I started running some decent times again. So I spent quite a few years, all that time I was on the roads and the track and the cross country. I ran some decent times on the road and then kind of discovered sort of mountain running by accident. Yeah, I was just on holiday in New Zealand one year in 1998, I think it was. I was just looking for races, and there was like it's a bit like Mount Snowdon. You run up and down this mountain. It's just a classic up and down, but it was about 10k up, 10k down. It was in Monaco. Yeah, and I was like camping. I camped to the bottom where the race start was, and I met the organizer, and yeah, and he was quite keen. Yeah, to see what I could do, because I'd ran some very good times on the road. So it's like saying, "No, you can go for the." He wanted me to go for the record, and I was like, "Well, I don't know about that. I think I told him I could do it in about 50 minutes," and he says, "Well, that'll be the uphill anyway." And he says, "Oh yeah, that would break the record then." But I don't, he said, "There's no way you break 50 minutes," and I ran it. I think in the race I ran it in like 48 minutes. I think something like that. And that, but the descent sort of killed me. But I realised after that, yeah, I could run uphill. Yeah, and that's kind of quite an important thing for a coach, a mountain runners, to realise, is that the flat speed translates directly to how quickly you can run uphill, so long as you do a bit of hill work. The flat speed's really important, because certainly in the shorter races, the physiological adaptations you need for running, say, half marathon, are the same as you need for a race like I did there in New Zealand. So yeah, and after that, I decided to go into mountain running, simply because I was doing a lot of road racing in Italy and Switzerland, and I was lining up against Kenyans, and yeah, I could run like 29-ish minutes, 10k for example, but these races have been running 28 minutes, so I was making no money at all. But in mountain running, yeah, I was right up near the front, right from the beginning. So yeah, it was the obvious choice to move into that, doing that and it was a purely financial thing. I didn't fall in love with the mountains or anything like that. There was nothing spiritual. It was purely financial. I thought I could make good money doing this. The race in New Zealand was a bit rubbish for money, because they had a handicap, and I'm not saying this is, I don't want to sound sexist, but yeah, the women were given a 30-minute start, and I felt that was a bit too big in a 20k race. So I ended up second. They caught everybody apart from the first woman, who was actually an English fell runner called Andrea Priestley. So she won, and I got second. And the money wasn't good in New Zealand, but yeah, the first race I did in the Alps, I won a couple of €1,000. I thought, well, this is a lot better than road running. So that's what I decided to do. But yeah, I mean, obviously, being in the mountains is way better than being in a city and, looking at skyscrapers and, cars. It's a much nicer environment. It's a nice lifestyle, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, the thing that got me into it was money. That's all it was. I was trying to be a pro road runner, and it wasn't happening. And I could be a pro runner in the mountains. Yeah, and that's mainly because these Africans kind of hadn't discovered it, or at least their managers hadn't discovered that they could send their guys to these mountain races and make good money. So I think, yeah, I think I timed it kind of right, because this is we're looking at the early 2000s here. And this is kind of the golden age, certainly, for making good money, in terms of prize money and appearance money, and the way athletes were treated. The whole thing's been turned on its head now, and it's become a very commercial, sort of profit-driven sport, and the athletes in general aren't treated as well as what I was, in my day. So yeah, that's kind of the story, I guess. But yeah, I was running professionally in 1998 as a mountain runner, and on and off. I went all the way through to, I guess, 2015 was my last serious race. So that's what, 17 years, I guess.
So what sort of age did you retire from racing for, for an income?
It's about 45, I guess. But it was kind of seasonal most of the time anyway, because it's kind of a summer sport. So in the winter, I do some road racing and cross country, but I'd also, work. I used to work I was living down in Bath, in Somerset. So I do some work as well over winter. Or some years, like if I'd had a really good summer, I had a lot of money, I just go traveling. So yeah, I did lots of trips like South America and the Himalayas and down under quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, it's a great lifestyle. I was really, really lucky to be able to make enough money to sort of do that, just wander around, everywhere. Just, all the trips would be like running trips. I was running in Himalayas and I was running in South America. I was actually cycling in South America because cycling was always a big bit of training for mountain running. Yeah, and it's kind of addictive, that kind of lifestyle. I mean, the great thing with it is you just get to see all these different places all over the world with running. Like I've raced. I went to Kenya like a couple of years ago before the virus, and we were working out. There was like a group of runners who were working out which countries we'd all raced in, and I'd worked out raced in 83 countries since I didn't go abroad until I was like 22, I think. Yeah, I've raced in like 83 countries. I'm not collecting, by the way. I was just. Yeah, if you count places like Monaco, it's a principality, not really a country. We counted Monaco and San Marino as countries. Yeah. It's quite a lot.
That is a lot. Yeah, that is definitely a well-traveled. Yeah. So
and it's like, what a great lifestyle, eh? I'm really lucky to do that. I mean, and that's the nice thing about coaching, because you can actually help people to experience what you've experienced. That's kind of one of the reasons I do it. Because I've had a totally charmed life. I mean, I had a shitty childhood. It was terrible. I had this sickness, but since then it's been awesome. I've kind of and the coaching's really just an extension of what I was doing as an athlete, I guess. It's just almost like carrying it on, but rather than living the dream sort of through my own actions, I live it through other people. I know that sounds maybe a bit weird or creepy or a bit sad, but like I think as a coach, if you're not like emotionally invested in the people you're working with, then you're not going to do the best job possible. So yeah, I mean, I never got that emotional as an athlete. I never cried when I won races and like that. But I probably get more emotional as a coach. Like when I see people I coach get emotional, that's what makes me emotional. If I see someone I coach win something and they get emotional, that makes me emotional. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but I kind of like that. I think that's really cool to actually think that I'm sort of a part of that. I mean, it's arguable whether I'm a big or a small part of that, but it's nice to be involved.
Yeah. So how did you, as far as your coaching then, what was that a conscious decision then to then just go straight into coaching, or is it something that you built up while you were still running, or just like a natural thing to do?
Well, no, like if you're a pro athlete, you need a plan B, because the longer you're a pro athlete, the less sort of work experience you'll have in the real world. So, even though I've got a degree in economics, that I can't use that. I can't go and get a job in a bank age 45. So you've got to have a plan B. So I'd done some, I've studied sort of exercise physiology at Bath during one of the periods when I wasn't racing so much. I'd started coaching now, and I'd done some coaching at the club at the university in Bath, and done some coaching in Bristol, the club there. So I started off in like the classic club setting. I was working with there's a great coach called Mike Down who lives in Bristol. He's been coached there for about 130 years, I believe. He's actually not aged, as far as I know. He was coaching before, back when Roger Bannister was a kid. That's how long he's been doing it. He's a bit of a legend. So I worked with him and worked with some coaches at Bath. At that time, that was like one of the athletics academies. I don't think it is now, but it certainly was back in the early 2000s. So I've always been like interested in it, because I knew that was probably my only option when I had to quit running. And the thing about being a pro is you never know when that's going to happen. If you're a torn hamstring away from the end, that's all it takes. Just one terrible injury and it can be over. Certainly, maybe not completely over, but it's not hard to make money in a sport like mountain running. So there's only one or two people that can do well. So one bad injury means I go, as soon as I'm out of the top 5 in the races, then suddenly I need to get a proper job. You can really, there's only room for one or two really top performers in the sport. It's changed a little bit now, but back then the money was good, but only if you were, right at the top, and you had to be at the top of your game all the time. So I think I started, the first guy I started coaching on a sort of one-to-one basis was this guy, Robbie Simpson, who, he was kind of an up-and-coming mountain runner. I think he'd ran for GB as a junior. He was doing okay, but he was struggling to go from junior to senior. I met him at a race, I think, Tion-Dixence, which is quite a big race in Switzerland. It's in the same region as Sierre-Zinal. These two races are twinned, and he was doing Tion-Dixence and Sierre-Zinal, and he'd had a crappy run at Tion-Dixence. And I think one of the British managers for the mountain running had said, "Oh, you should have a word with Martin. He may help you out," because because I'd done quite well in the sport. And so I started coaching him. I think that was like 2012, I guess, 2012. And he certainly that season, he did a bit better, and then he just kept getting better and better and better every year. And we did. And I think it was 2015. That was when I kind of had to stop running for money, and that's when I actually set up the business side of the thing. So Robbie was the first guy I was coaching, and then I decided to start this online coaching business because I saw a few other people had done it, and it was something new, quite new back then. And like there's a lot of online coaches now, but I think in 2015 there weren't so many. But it was another guy, this guy called Robbie Britton, who's sort of ultra runner, and he works for the Centurion thing. I met him once in the lakes. He gave me the idea, to be perfectly frank. He was doing it. I thought, bloody hell, if he's doing it, I can do it, because it just had never occurred to me that I could actually, because I was coaching Robbie and we're doing well, it never occurred to me I could ask people to pay me to do that, because that's not the tradition in the UK. No, people don't pay coaches. You go to the club and
you get coached.
So it kind of opened my eyes a bit. Yeah. So I sort of got my mate to do me a website, and I just stuck it online and did a bit of, the old Facebooking, got involved with Twitter and Facebook, and Instagram wasn't so big then. And yeah, it took it going from there. And I think all the social media was a waste of time. It just happened by word of mouth, really. Because Robbie was getting better and better, and I think people thought, oh, he's coaching Robbie, and so I was getting inquiries initially from Scottish hill runners. So I started up coaching a lot of Scottish hill runners because Robbie's from Aberdeen, and he's just a bit of a legend there. And then, yeah, and then it's also I got a physio I worked quite closely with. He sent a couple of people my way who he'd been working with who were looking for a coach, and one of these guys wanted to be an ultra runner, and I didn't know too much about ultra running at that point, but yes, I started working with him, and again, that was right at the beginning. That was 2015. That was this guy Peter Abraham, his name is, and he was my first client. I don't hate the word client; it's terrible. He's not a client, my mate. All these people are my mates. Eventually, they're just like they're athletes. They're not. I'm not a solicitor. No.
My wife's a hairdresser, and she has clients.
Yeah. But he was the first guy, who came to me. This guy Peter, and he was. He was my age, but he's doing really well at the moment. He's doing track. He does track ultras. He's one of
that's a niche.
People.
That's a niche of a niche.
But he's doing really unbelievably well. He's just turned 50, and he's doing amazing. He's really progressed in the last 5 or 6 years with him.
So there's hope for me.
It took off from there, and some people stayed with me a long time. Some people didn't get on with me and quit, or I didn't get on with them and didn't work out. But it was interesting because I never really imagined coaching ultra runners, because when I did mountain running as my main sport, there wasn't ultra running. Nobody was doing ultra running in 2000. I know they were in the US, but that was a million miles away in back then. We didn't have all social media. I didn't know what Western States was until 10 or 12 years ago. So everybody did the short races or the mountain marathons or sky running, which sky running was quite a new thing there. And but nobody really went over 40, 50K. The biggest ultras then was the Swiss Alpine Marathon, which was a 50 miler. And a race called 6000D in La Plana, which was a 60K sky race. They were the big ultras, but they're kind of small compared to today's ultras, and they're really the only two that I was aware of. I mean, Festival to Templiers didn't kick off until sort of mid to late 2000s. I mainly coached these sort of hill runners and road runners initially, and then ultra running took off, and the rest is history, really.
With advertising and things like that, social media, nothing compares to the power of recommendation, does it? So if you're recommended by somebody, then you may forget advertising and marketing. You don't need it, do you? If your results speak for themselves, then word of mouth is like the best way to get business into.
I mean, obviously now athletes like Robbie, have a nice contract. He's with Adidas, and so he has to do quite a bit of social media. So he basically does my advertising for me, because he'll do a race and mention me, and I haven't got 10,000 followers, 20,000 followers. I think I got 2,000, but he has. So if he mentions me, then it's kind of viral. And it's not just Robbie. There's quite a few guys I coach who have a lot of followers. Beth Pascal, of course, has lot of followers these days, and yeah, I only need two top performers is sufficient to get the word out there. Because the thing is, although it's very popular, it's still quite small, like still a marginal sport. It's still a rich white person sport. Let's face it. So, so it's got Robbie and I've got and Beth there. Yeah, they'll reach just about every ultra runner globally between them. So, yeah, I mean, I never ever envisaged a time when that would be possible, and that's helped this boom in ultra running coaching as well. The fact that social media, it's made it. That's probably the only good thing about social media, in my opinion. It's there's a lot of very, very sinister things about it, but it's for someone like me, self-employed, doesn't earn much. Yeah, it's a lifesaver, really.
It was because of Beth that I actually figured out who you were. So I think I interviewed Beth for my running club during lockdown. My running club, the Michelovo running club in Derby, just decided we're like, oh, let's interview some inspiring runners to sort of keep morale up while COVID was going on, while everyone was locked in and the group runs are off and everything, and sort of a bit of a social thing. So I got asked to try and find an ultra runner that would because I was known as an ultra runner in the club. Could I find somebody to inspirational? And I was like, well, Beth only lives just up the road. She's in in Derbyshire, not far from where we are. So I thought I'll send her a message and just see if she replies, and sent her an email, and straight away she replied and said, yeah, I'd be happy to come on and chat. So I think I've spoke to her twice now. So once for the club and then once for this podcast, sort of interviewed her, and over the course of time I figured out that you were her coach. We talked about coaching during the interview and everything like that. And so I went to look for you on social media, and I thought, oh, this is him. You've not got that many followers. And I was in my head, I thought, it's such a high profile runner with such a great coach should have more of an online presence. But like you say, like you just said, it doesn't work like that, does it? You don't need to have a big ad campaign and advertise yourself, because your results speak for themselves. So you've got runners that are doing great things all over the world. That's straight away, that's the kind of advertising that you need, and you don't really struggle.
Yeah, I think if I wanted to just coach like sort of elite runners, I'd need to work a bit harder, not be so lazy with that. But I don't want to coach. I don't want to coach 6 Robbies. That wouldn't be so much fun. I like coaching people in different branches of athletics at different levels. You learn just as much from coaching a beginner who's never ran before, even, than just as much as I do coaching an elite runner. And coaching is you've got to be learning all the time. You can't. You can never sort of switch off. There's always stuff to be learned, especially about ultra running, because nobody's written a book about ultra running, about how to coach ultra runners. There's no good. Well, I know there's the Op Training book, but they're not very accurate. That's a nice thing to say about them. They're not so accurate. They're not a lot of use. If you pick one up, like Jack Daniels' book on 10K marathon training, you can pick that up and you can become a really good marathon runner if you read that book. But there's not a book like that for ultra running, because there's no history of coaching in ultra running either. There's no, like, I'm the first generation of ultra running coaches, aren't I? I mean, we haven't been doing it. I mean, there might be. I know it was popular in the Victorian times, but I'm not learning anything from those Victorian ultra running coaches. I don't know much about them. I'm applying what I know about, marathon running and mountain running and 10K running, and I'm applying that to ultra running. So I'm kind of I'm making it up as I go along, but I'm using fairly sound sort of physiological principles as well, because I have a lot of experience in this other side of the sport, and also I've been coached all my life. I think that's a crucial thing that I've not mentioned, is that I had this coach when I started at 12 at Leicester. So this guy, Paul Blissett, his name was. So he coached me, for 20 years. But I've also worked with Arthur Lydiard. I spent a lot of time in New Zealand. I worked with Arthur. Arthur's a legend in running. He invented the word jogging. He invented jogging. Can't get more legendary than that. And I've worked with.
So we can blame him for that, can't we?
Yeah.
Being called a jog.
Joggers in the 60s and 70s weren't joggers like joggers now. Joggers in the 60s and 70s were still running,
proper runners.
2:30 marathons. It was just called jogging then. It's different. But I've worked with Renato Canova as well, who's the top, probably the most influential marathon coach since Lydiard. So I think it's quite important to actually learn. To be a good coach, you've got to learn from other coaches, because it's not just about sort of data and facts and figures. It's about relationships, and sort of that interaction is very important. And those guys were really good at interacting with their athletes. That's something you can't really learn if you haven't been coached. I think if I'd have retired sooner as an athlete, I wouldn't have had the confidence really to become a coach, because I hadn't really worked out how to do it until I was, mid-40s anyway. I think I was lucky. I had a long career, and I timed it just right. I just about sort of absorbed enough information to be able to coach Robbie, effectively. I think if it had come to me 5 years earlier, I'd have made a hash of it, And I'd also 5 years earlier, I was too involved in the sport myself to have the time to, coach people. I've taken kind of a step back now from it. I still train twice a day, and I still do racing, but I just don't care anymore. I just don't care about the results. So I'm focused. It's a choice between having a chat with an athlete or going training. I'll always do the chat first and then fit the training around that. And in the past, it would have been the other way around. If there's away racing for 3 days, I wouldn't be able to speak to the athlete, because when I was racing, I was too selfish.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I think just talking about racing then. So the reason why we're having this conversation is because we had a chance encounter in Sacramento Airport. So what were you doing in California last month?
That's right. Yeah. It's not really a long story, but so when I started coaching ultra runners this guy came to me back in 2015. I thought, well, I understood a bit about training for the sport, because Renato Canova, I spoke to him a fair bit, and he'd coached a couple of 100K runners in Italy. So I knew a bit about it, and so I had a good knowledge of looking at energy systems and that. But so I knew sort of the training, but the mental side of the sport's obviously a huge part, and that's the bit I didn't understand, because I'd never done an ultra. I'd never done a long run longer than 3 or 4 hours. So I thought, I better start doing a few ultras here, just if I'm going to coach these people, because literally loads and loads of people were starting contacting me for ultra coaching, and I didn't really understand it fully. So yeah, I'd done a couple of ultras, and I'd heard of Western States. So you have to go back into 2010. In 2010, I went to the US. I traveled around with a guy called Ricky Gates, and he was making a film of the race. It was a film called Unbreakable.
Oh,
Yeah, Unbreakable. That's it. Sorry.
classic ultra running film.
Yeah. So and that's the first time I'd actually watched an ultra, been at an ultra, and the whole thing was like, what the hell is this, and I didn't get it at the time. I walked away and I wrote an article about my trip to the States, and I didn't really write much about Western. I was quite disparaging, really, the whole thing. Just like people there were just it was just a completely different, it's a different sport to what I did. It's just that, I just didn't understand it at all. Yeah, I didn't see why they'd want to do that even, But so when I started working with ultra runners, I thought, wow, that Western States is the race to do. That's the race I want to do, because it's the biggest one I knew about. I wasn't really turned on by UTMB because I lived in Chamonix in the early 2009, 2010, and the whole thing was just, it wasn't mountain running to me. It was too commercial, too big. It's so obvious. It was something that's designed purely to make the organisers millionaires. It's not about mountain running. It's certainly not the sport I do. But Western States was like something, that's the race I want to do. So the first couple of ultras I did were Western States qualifiers. So I did a race in Turkey and did another race. Then, of course, there was a virus and couldn't really do anything else race-wise. But I still wanted to do Western States. One of the guys at Coach just gave me an entry. He won an entry in the raffle. He's an ultra runner, a guy called Rob Allen. Thanks, Rob. He won't be watching because he's way too busy. He's too busy to watch. And he was also, he decided he didn't want to train seriously. He didn't have the time or the motivation anymore to train seriously for ultras, because it is very all-consuming, to run ultras at a decent level. So he won this ticket and then he gave it to me. So then so that's what I was doing there in Sacramento a few weeks ago. Was I'd just run Western States, like completely not ready, because I'd only run 200k races in my ultra running career. So, and I never banked on getting in so soon either. I mean, I thought maybe 5 years down the road I might get in with the lottery. So,
was it what you expected then?
Yeah,
it
was awesome. Yeah, it's I mean, there might be a better ultra, in the world. There might be a greater race than my friend, awesome race, but I don't really know about it. I mean, it just really, what I loved about it just reminded me of the races I used to do. There's 400 runners. It's just local organisation, and everybody's really into it. It's just how sort of mountain running should be, really. It's I don't know if that sounds elitist or not, but
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's kind of it's got that notoriety and fame, hasn't it, for being one of the older ultras in America. But it's, I think, because of that, the fact that they only allow, is it like 400? Is it just on 400 and something people every year? Only a set amount of people that are allowed to go on the trail for the race. So it makes it like an exclusive thing. So it's probably made more appealing because of that as well. But also because of that, it means that it's got more of a low key feeling to it, because it's not like a big massive extravaganza. Even though when you go to the finish and the start and everything, it's like a massive big deal. But the amount of people on the course makes it would make it more of like a low-key event, like the ones that you were used to doing back in the 90s, 2000s.
I don't know. It's just a sort of, it's all the history with the race as well. It's the first 100-mile race, and they just they haven't sold out. They could have sold out. They haven't sold out. It's really nice. I think races like that are getting rarer, I mean, Zagama is another race. Like that's a race I did. I think I did the second edition of Zagama. That's a race that hasn't sold out, and you've got like a 1% chance of getting into the lottery to Zagama because the numbers are so tightly controlled to, because of the nature of the environment you're running through. That I respect them for that as well, and a lot of those races are rare things, and it's I'm at the age where I'm kind of doing races that I wouldn't have done when I was running for money. So I wouldn't call it a bucket list as such, but it's that kind of thing. I did I ran Comrades a couple of years ago, and that's a race I always was interested in. But yeah, it made no sense for me to do that race when I was racing professionally because it was one race. And it would have wiped me out for the rest of the year probably. So I never got to do it. I did another race in Spain, 2019, Pico de Leta. It's a road race. It goes 50k to the highest road in Europe, about 3,600 meters, uphill only. Always wanted to do that race. Never did it, but I've done it now. Great race. Yeah, and there's a few others I want to do as well. Passatore is another one. It's 100k in Italy. That's basically Europe's answer to Comrades. That's been going 50 or 60 years. So certain races I'd really like to do, and part of it's a new challenge for me, and part of it is learning about the sport that I'm coaching because. I've said to a few people I never like giving people workouts to do, athletes I coach, if it's not a workout I've done myself, So if I'm giving someone 8-hour runs to do, then I need to be doing that myself just to know exactly what they're letting themselves in for. And so for Western, I got up to 8 hours in I think 9 hours actually in training. I've learned a lot. There's still a lot to learn, I think, for me, for coaching for ultras, but I'm making inroads now, certainly. And Western States didn't go great for me, but I learned a hell of a lot by doing it. I learned it's running 100 is a different sport to running 100k or 50s. It's completely different. Yeah, it's quite interesting how you just switches from you have to learn to switch off all those things that are telling you to stop, and then learn to control all that negative feelings and just keep going. And I didn't really experience that running 50 milers, 100k, but that you spend a big chunk of a 100-mile race thinking that way and trying to control that. It's quite interesting.
So how would your experience of doing Western now affect the way that you would coach somebody for it?
I think I guess the other thing about ultras is, like, if you're doing a really big race like that, the sort of specific nature of the course is the most important element of the training. So because UTMB is a very different route to Western States route. It's very different terrain, it's different, the mountains are different, the weather's different. So and so I appreciate, the importance of the heat and the altitude a lot more now. And I know the trails, I know what the trails are like. I know that I didn't know the first 50k there was so tough, but the first 50k is kind of, after the climb, it's pretty, I won't say it's super technical, but for me it's super technical. For someone like Beth, it's not, but for me, a road runner, a 10k runner, it really is. And after that, the trails get easier. But you could really wipe yourself out if you could expend a lot of energy early on trying to race on that very technical, undulating, rocky, sort of gnarly trails they got there. So that's the main thing I learned. Is I think it's important. I think it was important to do it just so I know exactly how to coach people for it. But of course, I've learned sort of how mentally tough it all gets. But I kind of knew that anyway. I knew it was going to be really tough. I mean, it's 100 miles. How's it not going to be tough? But yeah, I dealt really well with the heat. Dealing with the heat is really important in a race where anything over 30, 35 degrees, especially if you're coaching English people, I mean, 25 degrees is a baking hot day for the English. So yeah, if you're going really hot like that, that's a major part of the training and the in-race kind of logistics. That's the other really important thing with ultras is, you do have to learn to look after yourself really well during the race, because you haven't got a coach to call up and say, oh, I'm overheating, oh, my stomach's, turning in knots. You've got to learn on the run to, turn things around if things are going a bit wrong for you. So I learned a lot of things sort of about that as well. It's a lot of fun though. I mean, can see why people do it now. Like I say, when I went to Western in 2010, I didn't understand it. There's all these old guys with big beards, big bellies, and they got the jeans pulled up, and they got this big belt buckle on show. There's loads of guys I met like this, and it's like, what are these guys on? They were so proud of what they'd done. And they were very kind of. Well, the Californians, aren't they? They're like, I never met Californians before. They're very friendly and loud and, boisterous kind of people.
Yeah.
I'd never come across that before. But yeah, I never got why it was such a big deal to have that belt buckle and why they were so proud. But I kind of get it now.
Yeah.
I get it. It's a pretty big thing. And it's a massive thing in the States. Like, it's a massive thing to win that race. I never really realized how big it was to win that race for those guys,
It's amazing to see. I know the reason I was there was I was just by chance. I wasn't really in the area. I was on my way to Canada to see my brother, but I managed to fit it in on the way and got myself a place on the media team filming. And I've been to plenty of races before and done plenty of ultras, but I've never experienced that atmosphere of like coming to the finish. So I was filmed for the live stream from Roby Point down to the finish. So we were picking up all the leaders as they were coming through and filming them all the way down. And I couldn't get over, the fact, like the guy who won, Adam Peterman, like, I don't know how many people he had with him. It was like basically a massive entourage of people all shouting and whooping and cheering and everything. And then everyone in the street, it was like, the only way I can describe it is like a Tour de France, like mountain stage, like win, where all the crowd are literally like on them and they're all just parting out of the way at the last minute and moving. And I was like fighting for position just to be able to keep a camera on the guy, but I've not kind of experienced that kind of frenzy before. But I suppose with mountain running, you've experienced that in the past with big races, haven't you?
Yeah, not quite like that. But yeah, there's some races were pretty. Yeah, there's like I guess the Young Pro marathons are pretty. It's not so big anymore. I mean, it's still a big race, but that used to be the race everybody wanted to win. And Sierre Zinal, of course. Sierre Zinal is still probably the toughest race to win in the world in mountain running. The competition there is just brutal. Everybody wants to win that race as much as they want to win UTMB, I guess. It's just, that's pretty crazy. But I guess Western's on a par with that. Sure. Yeah, the sort of the best moment for me was coming into Quarry Road because Scott Jurek was there, and this guy gave me a coffee. And it's Scott Jurek. Like how many other races does the guy who's won 7 times? Probably the greatest guy who's ever ran that race. 7 wins. Is he there on an aid station or like giving out coffees to people right at the back like myself? That's pretty darn cool. I kind of know Scott a little bit as well, because I spent a bit of time with him and Ricky in the lakes.
Did he sleep on your floor or something?
He slept on my kitchen floor, yeah. Yeah, because he'd come over to run the Bob Graham round with Ricky, and Ricky was doing an article, because that's what Ricky does. He's a writer and a journalist, and travel. He does like travel logs, that kind of thing. Yeah, but I knew Ricky was coming, but he didn't say he's bringing a friend. And I had a tiny bedsit in Windermere. Yeah, and he showed up with Jurek, and so where's he sleeping then? And we sort of flipped a coin. We flipped a coin because, I don't suck up to superstars. I'm not like that. He wasn't getting any favors from me. And he ended up on his thermal rest in the kitchen. I think Ricky had the sofa and I had the bed. But I kind of wish I'd give him the bed because he was doing the Bob Graham. It's a bit mean. But they only stayed one night. We went over to the hotel in Borrowdale that Bob Graham used to run himself. So we spent we did a bit of a training camp over in Borrowdale. And then I was going to run the Bob Graham, but didn't. And Ricky and Scott ran it. Pretty cool. Pretty cool weekend, that. Very, very interesting guy. I learned loads from him about. Yeah, because like I say, I didn't know much about ultra running. Yeah, I certainly. Yeah, I've never seen a guy eat so much food as him. He's quite a big guy, but we went out for curry, and it was like the waiters were standing around, just shaking their heads. These guys have seen everything over the years, but he was ordering. He must have had you used to get 2 naans, don't you? Yeah, a couple of naans, bowl of rice, and some your curry sauce or whatever, your masala or your sorry, I don't go out for Indians much. Chicken tikka masala, whatever.
I see.
And you might have a couple of papadums to start. But he had 10 papadums to start. And then he got rice, and he got his naans, then he got more rice and more naans. And he had 2 or 3 mains, but he just kept ordering these spicy potatoes and the spinach thing, sagaloo. And he was just ordering food and beer, just 2 or 3 beers, washing. He just kept eating, and me and Ricky were like, wow. Yeah, I've had enough after rice and a naan. But Scott was just an animal. He goes, "Wow, man, like it's his last meal, he's on death row."
Obviously carving ready for the next day, aren't it?
Yeah, but it's when you've been around runners all your life, it's rare to see people eat like that. And it just made me think this is the greatest sort of ultra runner of all time, arguably. You could disagree with that, but he's one of the top 5 anyway.
He's still one of them.
But he's very strict vegan, but he eats like a horse. It's like should tell people something really about how important the nutritional side of the sport is. Because I've always been very interested in nutrition, and I don't like outsourcing any aspects of the coaching to other sort of experts, particularly nutritionists or dietitians. The only people I work with are the physios and the biomechanists, because obviously I can't do that myself remotely, but the nutrition and the psychology and everything else, I like to do that myself. And I learned a lot from Scott, and I took a much bigger interest in the kind of way he eats and how he feels, what he's done over the years. So it was kind of
that book he wrote. Is it Eat and Run?
Yeah.
It's the only running book that I've got that's full of cooking, full of recipes as well.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not exaggerating. I was blown away by his performance in that. that curry house. That'll live with me the rest of my life. It was just, yeah, it's just, it's like an epiphany almost, Yeah, because I've always been a big eater. I've never had I don't think I've ever had issues with energy sort of deficit type problems. The problems I had when I was young, it certainly wasn't diet related. I mean, I might not have had a good diet, but I ate plenty. But I suddenly realised, this is a big part of this sport as well, like the nutrition side of it. Because if you're coaching 5K and track runners or even marathon, you don't really think too much about the diet, because it's in a marathon, that's the only event where you need a few gels. You probably need 8 gels in marathon. But ultras, you've really got to start thinking about, your in-race nutrition and also your diet in general to actually fuel the training, because the training load tends to be
excessive.
Although it's not bigger than marathons, it tends to be very concentrated into very small, sort of high volume blocks. So you've got to also learn to fuel that. So yeah, I think a lot of the people I've done really well with are people who've kind of nailed the diet, in their everyday life. That's a crucial thing. It's not something would ever have looked at in the past, but I like to look at that fairly on in the kind of relationship I have with athletes, just to make sure that's everything's okay with that. Because the trick in coaching for distance running anyway, you control as much of the things that are controllable. You can't predict injury that well. You can't predict being sick. You can kind of predict how you adapt to training, but there's all sorts of things you can control to make the training go well. And, things like your nutrition and your sleep and how stressful you let your life be in general. All those things you can control to an extent. So that's why I like to work on those. And then if you sort of get your lifestyle, as unstressful as possible, then the running tends to go well. Generally, the training doesn't work with the guys I coach if something's gone awry with one of those things in their everyday life, if they've got too much stress. And I see nutrition as a form of stress. If you eat crappy food all the time, the wrong sort of food, that's very stressful for the body.
That makes sense. Obviously you don't get fitter during the run, do you? You get the fitness comes from the adaptation and the recovery, doesn't it? So if you're not recovering properly from the training, you can put all the hard work in that you want, but if you're not recovering from it, you're not going to adapt to it, are you?
No, you're dead right. Yeah, adaptation happens when you're not training hard. It doesn't happen immediately after a track session. You're not suddenly quicker. It happens, during the period of easy training. Yeah, exactly. And you don't get the quality of recovery you need if you've got a really stressful existence outside of training, because training is super stressful. It's, I always warn, if I got somebody's like a beginner and they want to run ultras, I say, look, are you sure? Because this isn't healthy. It's not good for your body doing this. You're not designed really to run 100K in the mountains or whatever. There's gonna be a lot of kind of hardship for that reason. Running park runs and that's healthy. That's a healthy lifestyle. We're doing a bit of cycling, but running 100 miles a week in the mountains, training for 20 hours a week and running 100 miles it's not good for you. It's, I think social media gives people the impression it's an awesome, because everything on there is so awesome. Everybody's just awesome. They're doing these awesome things. And I like, Beth's had a lot of injury issues recently, and she's been really honest about it. I think that's been really cool to see, because, a lot of these top athletes, when they've got an injury or something, they just vanish. It's like, where have they gone? I think people need to know what potentially the sort of the nasty bit side of the sport, that you are doing things to your body which just isn't good. Maybe then they'll, that hopefully will teach them not to train so much. to be a bit smarter with training and not to do so many bloody races, So, it's really, as a coach, it's important to me that people have longevity in the sport, not just that they,
burn bright and then burn out.
Yeah, it's also that song, it's better to burn out than fade away. I don't want to be burning out. I'd rather they fade. I'm really happy that I'm fading away. Anyway, that Roger Daltrey's still making records today, isn't he? I think. And Keith Richards.
Yeah, they're all still going. Yeah.
They're still going, yeah.
One of the few that haven't killed themselves, yeah.
That's a cheery thought.
Yeah. Anyway, on that positive note, so what I intended to do with these podcasts, so what I want people to get from them is to have something practical to take away from it. Now that I've got on, one of the greatest ultra coaches and trail running coaches, what tidbits can you give us and the listeners for training? So if someone is going to be training, I'm not going to ask you about your training philosophy. I know that's not a question that's on the table, but if you could give a bit of advice for somebody, what's like a top tip that you could give to somebody who wants to say go and run a 100-miler ultra? Bit
of a general question, but
yeah.
I mean, basically, if somebody wants to run a 100-miler, depends where they're at. Like, I'd want to know, to answer that, I'd want to know, have they already run a 50? Have they run a marathon? Have they run 100K? And if the answer to those questions is no, then it's absolutely do not try to run 100 miles. Okay, start off short, build up to it. So sure, yeah, run a half marathon. Start with a half marathon. Don't start with 100K. Don't start with a 50. Start with a half marathon on trails. Do that for a year. Move on to marathons. Do that for a year. Don't think about 50s. Do that for a year. Maybe the odd 100K. And then once you've ran, half a dozen 100Ks and you feel really comfortable doing 100K, like you're not walking from 50K. Once you've nailed 100K, then think, right, it's time to go to 100 miles. Because 100, as I said before, 100 miles is another sport, particularly if you're running it in the mountains. Like, yeah, so that's a tricky question, because obviously you can do 100 miles on a track, you can do it on the road. But if we're talking about mountain running, yeah, you've got to make your body really strong. Your body's got to get strong and resilient, and you've got to toughen up your mind. So it's important not to rush into a 100-miler too quickly until you're absolutely ready to do it. And if you've got a coach and your coach says, yeah, here's a training for 100 miles, and you've only ever done a 50K, then I suggest you get another coach. Really,
I know that a lot of people, they seem, because of the popularity of the sport at the minute, I don't know whether it is at the minute, I see a lot of people just running a marathon and then going, oh, well, okay, I'll run a 50K, they do a 50K, and then it's straight up to a 100-miler and straight up to, doing these even longer ones, like the 200 plus ones now. So yeah, to hear that from a long-established coach is quite reassuring. The fact that I haven't done 100 yet. I've done 100K, and it's on my list of things to do. But I sort of, in my own mind, had that approach that why would you dive straight into a 100-miler when if you haven't really done anything in between and built yourself up? Because it's all about adaptation, isn't it? You can't adapt to running 100 miles when you've only run a 50K or something.
Yeah, I mean, like the most important thing about for me is that you've got a responsibility to not permanently damage people's health. I'm responsible for people's health because most of the guys do exactly what I tell them to do. So some of them do a lot more than what I tell them to do. One or two sometimes do a bit less. But there's a huge responsibility with that. If you're telling people to go off into the mountains and run 6 hours, you know, it's a lot of responsibility. So, yeah, I wouldn't tell somebody to do something it's gonna damage their health just for a bit of money. I think that's what a lot of coaches are doing, you know. And also, I want people to have fun. Okay, it's like that fun is still, people forget it's supposed to be fun, I think, sometimes. And
yeah, it's fun. It's a hobby.
you know, if 100 miles isn't funny if you have to walk like 50 of it. I walked 40k of Western States. It wasn't a hell of a lot of fun, to be honest. Apart from meeting Scott Jurek, that was cool. But apart from that, it was generally.
Did he remember?
It wasn't very nice, and it was really, really slow. Walking is really slow compared to running. So, you know, in most mountain hundreds, you're going to be walking the climbs towards the end anyway, but you don't want to be so physically exhausted that you can't run downhill, you know. But that said, like, you know, most of these big races like UTMB, they have very generous cutoffs, and I think an averagely fit person could walk around UTMB in 48 hours or whatever the cutoff is. So, but I coach people who want to perform and improve. That's my only sort of criteria for selecting an athlete, is that they're ambitious in that they want to get better. I don't care where they're starting, but they've got to be motivated sort of to improve in terms of performance, you know. So that they need a lot of kind of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So they need goals, but they also they got to love it as well. Mm. Yeah, but they're going to fall out of love with it pretty quickly if I put them into something they're not ready to do. There was a guy recently, actually, a perfect example. He raced in Val d'Aran on the weekend. He did really well. He did 100k. I think he was 30, about 30. Yeah. I thought he did awesome because he didn't have a lot of time to train at altitude or in the heat. He's a doctor, so he's kind of busy. Yeah, but he won the Ben Nevis Ultra, which is a 50k, and he was like, Martin, I want to go and do straight to 100 miles. I'm like, what? No way, I'm not getting involved with that crap. You're not, like, you can do it, but I don't want to be involved with that. I think you need to run 100k first, you know. And he wanted to do Val d'Aran 100 miles. I'm like, no, so at least not under my guidance, you know. I think if you spoke to him, he'd say, yeah, we made the right decision there, because he found that 100k real tough. It was really tough. He did amazing, I thought, given the training he'd had time to do, and you know how tough that race is. That it was 30 degrees. The race is mainly over 2,000 meters, and it's gnarly. It's not nice trails. Yeah, and to make the top 30 there I think he did 15 hours. 6,000 meters of vert. I thought that was really good for a first proper ultra. Yeah, I just hope he's thankful that he didn't do the 100 miles. I don't know, that would have been. I think he really suffered at the end of the 100k because they stick this really steep climb at the end of Val d'Aran just to make it really hard. It's like 6k and 1,200 meter climb and descent right at the end. It's brutal, and I think he had a tough time on that. So I think hopefully, I'm going to talk to him tomorrow actually, but I think secretly he's quite happy that he didn't enter the 100 mile, you know.
Wise thing.
That's you know, that's my advice for 100 mile. The only other advice I give is just learn to eat. The biggest reason why people DNF, and nobody wants to DNF, is they get gut problems. You know, that's the biggest. You know, they've done research at UTMB and Western on why people DNF, and I think 70% is GI issues. Yeah, and all the rest of the DNS is probably down to glycogen depletion, and that leads to really bad muscle soreness. So both those things are down to people not really practicing eating enough in training and not knowing how much they ought to be eating during these races, you know. So yeah, do a bit of research if you don't have a coach. Look into the old nutrition. But yeah, like the guys I coach, anything from like 80 to 90 grams of carbs per hour to, I think the best guy can do 140 grams per hour.
That's a lot.
Which if you're eating those wheat gels, that's 7 per hour.
Good go.
I can't. Yeah, it depends on how
I can't open the packets that quickly.
No. So, but yeah, just you've got to. That's so important. So if you're out there doing 30, 40 grams per hour, you've just got to. Yeah, don't try to attempt a 100-mile race on that. That's the other thing with progressing slowly through the distances with ultra running. You eating during running, you've got to train yourself to do that, just as you've got to do with training your legs to run fast. You've got to train your gut to take on board energy, basically. And it doesn't come naturally. You've got to really work on that. So yeah, don't do 100 until you've really nailed that nutrition, dialed in. I think dialed in is what the ultra running folks say. You've got to get your nutrition dialed. I think it's an American that. Yeah, certainly the thing that unites the guys I coach who are doing really well is they've really nailed that nutrition side of things. There's a guy called Harry Jones I coach who's really good at that. Guy Josh, he won the Snowdonia 100 last year. He's a big eater. He's really Beth is a real good eater. You know, she's doing 4 gels an hour. Spring gels she has, which are kind of a natural thing. She's doing 4 an hour at UTMB. That's a lot of gels. If you know, probably 500 quid worth of gels there. Right? So
every penny.
Yeah.
Good advice.
I've got lots of tips. There's not enough tips. I can give you tips. It's my job is to give people tips. That's what I do.
You can send them to me privately. Yeah. That's brilliant. Well, I'm aware of taking up too much of your time. I know that you were pushed to do it this evening. You'd rather have done it in the morning, but appreciate.
Yeah, I apologise. I'm a little bit slow in the evening. It's so hot here at the moment.
Yeah, here too as well. That's what you see. I've been gulping water. I'm sat in, which is my podcasting studio is actually my wife's hairdressing salon in the back garden. Converted some buildings, and it's and I had to keep the door shut because the kids are in the garden and the dog's running around. So I to keep the noise down, I've had the door shut. But it's been 28 degrees over here, and you know, you're English, you know that 28 degrees in England is rare, and it's if you know about it because it's so muggy. So I'm sat here absolutely wringing with sweat, drinking water. So yeah, what's the temperature over there?
Pretty similar, really. Yeah. It's sort of hovering around 30.
Yeah, 30.
But the nice thing here is because I'm sort of in the mountains, so at night it does go quite chilly. So the worst thing about the UK during a heat wave is it's just so hot at night as well. And here, at least, there's a little bit of respite, which I like. You know,
I've got one of those. You know, the tall standing fans, the long thin ones. I've got one of them, and I've wedged it on top of the ironing board so that it blows not cold air, but blows air across the top of the bed. So when you're lying in bed, you can feel a breeze coming across the top of the bed. I think I've nailed it.
Does the noise not keep you awake though?
No, it's like white noise, so it actually helps me sleep. Weirdly.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So there's my top tip to you. We
don't really need aircon here, to be honest, because like I say, it gets cool at night, and the village I live in, the houses are, you know, hundreds of years old, so they're this thick stone, and they were sort of designed in a time when there was no aircon, so they stay nice and cool. Yeah, they stay nice and cool in it downstairs because it's almost underground downstairs. It's a really thick wall, so it's not too bad. Not too bad at all. That's why all the rich Brits live down on the Riviera. This is the most popular place, like Monaco in particular. All these famous ex-cyclists, they all come and live here. Chris Froome lives down there. Sagan lives down there. All these, Radcliffe lives down there. Paula Radcliffe, Mo Farah, they've all got places there. It's just an amazing climate, really. I mean, the winters are very mild. And, you only get a tiny bit of snow. It's always sunny. 300 plus days of sun a year. It's great.
That's good.
I'm every day I wake up and thank God I got out before Brexit. Really, because it'd be very hard to get residency here. Post the changeover. I moved here because I was previously living in Austria, and I moved here just at the right time. I was talking to Robbie yesterday, and they've got a situation now because he's a pro and he wants to race in Europe. He can only get a 90-day visa, and then is it 90 days in maximum he can stay, and that's not such a long season. I used to race out here from May to October. That's 6 months. I couldn't do that now. It'd be impossible because of the needing a visa to be here.
But it's a great place to live, though. You recommend it?
Yeah, highly recommended. And very, very cheap. Where I am, really cheap,
Brilliant.
Yeah, you can buy like a do-it-up type of house for next to nothing, like 30 or 40 grand.
Wow.
Really, it's just because it's the mountain areas in like this area is called the Mercantile, and these small villages are just dying, because the young people are moving away because, the Wi-Fi is not good enough. And they're just old people and there's no jobs. And so you can pick up these little houses really cheaply. And it's a bit like Provence was, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's one of those areas, if you buy a house here now, this could be the next boom town for, foreigners coming. Because Provence is really expensive now. But this Mercantile region, which is the north of Monaco and Nice, is a bit of a it's a well kept secret, I think. It'd be nice to have somebody out here who spoke my language as well. That's why I talk so much. I don't do much talking. My French is awful.
Well, if I turn up on your doorstep, will you let me sleep on your floor like you did for Scott Joret?
No, not at all. No, there's a spare room. Like, that was the thing. I was living in the lakes, and the cost of a bed sit in the lakes was more than I've got a 3-bedroom house here.
The same price.
The same as a bed sit in the Lake District.
Wow.
The house is bigger than what I need. So there's an upstairs with a little ensuite, for guests. I've got somebody staying with me at the moment. So it's you want no need to sleep on the floor unless you really want it. I mean, it was really funny. I think like when after Scott had left, I noticed there was a little hole in the skirting board, and he'd crammed one of my tea towels in the hole. I think he was scared of like mice coming out in the middle of the night. I can just picture it, just looking in this hole, thinking, or spiders or something. It was really quite cute, that, I thought. Yeah.
Brilliant. Right,
because they've done the Appalachian Trail. I've been sleeping out in the wilderness with bears, and stuff. Yeah, and he's worried about spiders in my dirty little bedsit in Windermere.
I must admit, I did see when I went up to Canada after I saw you at Sacramento. I flew up to Vancouver and went to Vancouver Island where my brother lives, and I'd never really worried about it before, because the last time I visited it, I was running at the time 13 years ago, but not quite to the same amount that I do now. So I'd gone and ran from his house that's on the side of a mountain and just ran up his road and just gone along the road and done like a bit of a loop and come back. But now things are different. He's got a trail that like a national trail that runs along the side of his, like the boundary of his properties. And I'm like, right, that is it. I'm going on that trail. So I'm running along that trail on the first day I'm there, and I'm thinking, I've never actually, because he said, watch out for the bear. And then
that's useful advice, isn't it?
Yeah, so I spent the whole time I was there, every time I went for a run, I was paranoid. I didn't. Sometimes I'll listen to music if I'm bored while I'm running, or podcast, but I listened to nothing while I was there because I didn't want to be taken by surprise by something in the bushes. And everywhere I went, every trail run I did, I was conscious of thinking about bears. And then by nearly the end of the holiday, I was about to come back, and I thought, well, I've not seen a bear the whole time. I've been over remote trails that are like just like power line trails and stuff where there's no people there at all. Not seen a bear at all. I've seen plenty of deer bombing around. And then I was just walking his kids down the trail near where he lives, and sure enough, there goes a black bear wandering across the trail. So I spent the whole time running in fear of bears. And then I just saw one when I was walking with his kids, and I was still terrified. I didn't know what to do, whether to. And my nephew, with all of the bundle of energy that he is, was saying, "Oh yeah, it's fine. We'll just keep walking." I was like, "Well, what do you do with your dad when you see a bear on the trail?" "Oh, we just keep walking. We just keep going." I'm like, "You sure? You sure you don't just stop and wait for it to go?" So I'm sure he was trying. I was convinced he was trying to kill us. Well, that's not.
From what as far as I know, they don't really attack you.
No.
Like,
it's more.
those grizzly bears can be a bit twitchy, slightly unpredictable. But yeah, I think that the only time you got to watch it is if they got their cubs around. If there's some cubs, you might have a problem. But yeah, I seen one bear in Europe. That's the only real close encounter I've had with a bear in Slovenia, actually, a few years ago. I don't know if there's any left today. It's probably about 20 years ago, actually. Yeah, just running up a mountain with a friend, John Brown. John was in front, and just pulling away, just putting the hammer down as usual. And about a minute later, he comes pissing past me down the trail. He goes, well, I didn't hear what he said. He shouted something, and it sounded like it's a fucking bear. I thought, no, I'm sure he just said it's a bear, but I thought that's just can't be. I must have misheard him. And sure enough, I got around the trail, and there was a great big bear there. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, apparently the thing to do is you've got to run downhill because they can't run downhill.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're rubbish downhill. Yeah, they're great uphill, not downhill. They sort of roll over like that. But yeah, we went to the tourist office saying we didn't know there were bears in Slovenia, and they said no bears here, no bears, no bears in Slovenia. Very safe, tourists. We just saw a bear, mate. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, brilliant. On that note, then we've talked about the sun. I appreciate you coming on and having a chat and sharing some of your knowledge with us.
It's been a pleasure.
Is there any way of do you want people to follow you on social media? Do you want people to get in touch? Are you asking people to not contact you for coaching because you're too busy, or are you open to?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to give me a follow, that's good. Yeah, my name is my business name, VO2max Coaching. Yeah, I mean, I have a waiting list, sure, but I usually like if someone contacts me, I'll always reply and I'll say, yeah, I might be at some point in the future be interested, or no, maybe it's not. You don't really need a coach, as I said earlier. Not everybody is going to benefit working with me. I'm not, I don't have a sort of golden touch. It's not like I work, like they've got to be the right person. They've got to be in the right situation, and I'm always very upfront about that. But yeah, I have a waiting list, but it's not so long. It's because sometimes I try to pass people on to other coaches. It's always worth contacting me. You never know. You really, you never know. I mean, I think a lot of people think I'm full up, and I am, but that's not to say people don't quit. You know, people's priorities change. You know, yeah, I'm taking on a couple of new people right now, I think. Yeah, that's mainly to pay for all the money I spent in the US. I'm a little bit broke after that. That country, wow, it's not a country to be poor in, is it?
It really isn't. No, Canada wasn't bad, but America was bad. Yeah, I know what you mean.
California, wow.
No.
Yeah, but no, please get in touch. And usually I try to help somebody a little bit. I'll answer a few questions, set them on the right road, you know.
Yeah.
So
I'll put your contact details, like your Instagram page on the show notes for the podcast and the video and everything. And
yeah, I mean, what I have on the website, I have a contact form, so you just fill in the contact form and that. Yeah, sometimes people do contact me on Instagram, but I don't always pick up on that.
Yeah.
I mean, the contact form's the best way to get in touch.
Right.
But yeah, it is. I'd love to coach more people, to be honest, because it's a time factor, because I'm still sort of training myself quite a bit, and I'm slightly lazy. I do like to sleep a lot. So yeah, I don't want to spend 10 hours a day working on the coaching. I need some time. Yeah, I'd like to say if I coach 30 or 40 people, I wouldn't have a life and they wouldn't have a good coach, you know. So but yeah, if you want to work with me, then get on the waiting list, because that's the way. I mean, there's no other way. I mean, right now. You know, like getting into UTMB or Western States, get on the waiting list, you know. You know, keep applying for the lottery, and eventually maybe it might be 5 years' time, but you know, you've got to be kind of patient, haven't we?
Yeah, the waiting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Great,
well,
Sam.
Thank you. We appreciate you coming on. Thanks for that, and I'll keep in touch and keep following you and see what you get up to.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.